Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's film study with 11warriors.com. I'm Kyle Jones. As always, please remember to follow, like, subscribe, not only 11 Warriors here on YouTube, but as well as the film study playlist where you can go back and watch all of our videos from this season. Can't believe this is already video number 13, week 13 in the regular season. We're winding down, still trying to figure out exactly what kind of content we're going to have, but luckily it looks like the Buckeyes are going to have a number of playoff games, postseason matchups that we'll be able to break down over the next month or two. But right now, today we're going to dig into last weekend's matchup with Indiana. Top 5 showdown in the shoe. Didn't turn out to be as close as many expected. The Buckeyes really dominated, especially after the Hoosiers' first possession. Jim Knowles and company really figured out how to get pressure on Curtis Rourke and absolutely smother the Indiana offense. Certainly, the special teams made a big difference for the Buckeyes in this game. 2 punts. One was a botched snap, another a return for a touchdown for Caleb Downs. That, along with a big turnover in the red zone, allowed for Ohio State to have a short field all day. Now, the box score was a little bit goofy on both sides, low output for Ohio State's offense, but really efficient, great effort from Will Howard. We're going to get into a little bit about how Chip Kelly designed ways for Howard to attack the Indiana defense, really finding a weak spot, especially with that weak side defensive end and getting it to drop into coverage as often as the Hoosiers ask him to. As well as a couple issues, a lot of eyes on the offensive line and how the Buckeyes would adjust to yet another injury up there. They were able to make it work, but certainly some growth still needed to happen, especially as we prepare for this coming Saturday's big game in the shoe. I don't need to tell you who's coming to town. Everyone's been looking forward to it for weeks. Obviously, next week I'll be here to break it all down for you. But right now, let's dig into what we saw against the Hoosiers. All right, let's start off by talking about what Ohio State was doing to stop the Indiana run game. We can see a simple handoff here. It gets stuffed by Sonny Styles right at the line of scrimmage. We watch the end zone view. We're going to see 6 here on the left side, going to come over across, basically untouched, take away the ball carrier, leave him nowhere to run. But I want to talk quickly about how Ohio State was handling this, because really what we can do, and will move me out of the picture here, is you're going to see Cody Simon is actually blitzing, and he's actually trying to blitz and occupy that right guard. Hero Kanu was in at nose tackle. He's going to try to come across, hold the center. And what's going to end up happening is Styles is going to come over behind that blitz. It's really creating a 5-man wall. Again, we fast forward, we can see there goes Simon, and he's really trying to run through and occupy that right guard. Meanwhile, by Kanu coming back over, right, he's going to end up, looping back inside. He's really trying to occupy the center. And what ends up happening is you get these 3 guys, actually it's 4 defenders right here, right? Four blockers occupying 3 defenders, and that leaves Styles unblocked. The whole point of this run blitz, yes, it's sending pressure. You're sending Simon on a blitz. He blitzed a lot. We'll talk a lot about that. But the whole goal is to free up one of your linebackers to mirror the running back. Now, we've got backside pressure from Tuimolo out to make sure there's a bootleg or cutback is taken away. We've got Downs coming out to take the front side and box it. But really, this entire scheme is set up for Styles to be able to run free, mirror the back, and make a tackle without having to deal with blockers. Now, Ohio State ran this quite a bit against Indiana with a lot of success, playing man-to-man coverage behind it. As we go back, you can see we've got man here, we've got man here, we've got man here. Downs has actually got the tight end. The back is defended by the 2 linebackers, and then you have the free safeties, and Lathan Ransom here. And by playing this man coverage behind it, you can see, right, Matthews isn't even watching. These guys, they've got their back turned. They're allowing the perimeter defenders, the corners, the slot corner to really man up on the outside. That helps take away the RPOs. Michigan had a lot of success with this against Indiana, and they're allowing the front 6 to take the run. This was not an RPO, but it just showed Ohio State's game plan to really stifle the Indiana offense. All right, everybody's favorite. We're going to talk about D-line technique, because we get another inside handoff kind of stuff. It's a 4-yard game, but why do I want to show this play? Because Ty Hamilton was just a stud against this offensive line. Now, Hamilton right there, 58. He's playing a 3 technique on this play. He's normally the nose, meaning he's in the A-gap between the center guard, here between the guard and the tackle. And he really takes this the right guard for Indiana, and just really kind of owns him on this play. And what do I mean by that? So as the ball is snapped, what we're going to see, his hands hit first. Right, you can see Hamilton is making contact before the blocker can. The blocker's hands are out wide. What does that mean? It means that the actual defender here is now in control. He's almost blocking the blocker. He's keeping his shoulders square to the line. That's a hugely important thing if you want to be able to shed. He's staying square to the line. He's able to rip one arm free. There's nobody else who's free for Ohio State, mind you. There was not a run blitz like I showed on the last play. Nobody else is free. So that means that there is an alleyway, right, for this running back to run through if Hamilton doesn't make this tackle. Simon's trying to rip off. Maybe he would have made the play 10 yards downfield. Downs down here at the bottom of the screen. Yes, he might be able to get over the top, but he's pretty far away. So this play is really made, and it's allowing Ohio State to stay alive, keep it in a manageable situation because Ty Hamilton really just owning and winning this battle up front. So, Illinois or Indiana's offensive line, certainly, not what Ohio State's going to see when you get Oregon or teams in the playoff, most likely. But, it's great to see Ohio State's defensive tackles really winning these one-on-one battles when they have to. All right, now one of the reasons Ohio State had so much success against Indiana was their ability to stifle the passing game. Obviously, the blitzing made a big difference. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. But it was really their ability in the back end to mix up coverages and show different looks to try to throw off Rourke and push the ball where they didn't want it to go. Now, Indiana has some good receivers. Anytime you can force a throw to the back is great, but the coverage structure Ohio State was using here was really kind of unique, especially for them. Obviously, the concept for those that follow are not going to, see it as anything new because this was special, stubby, mini. There's a bunch of different names for it, but essentially it's a variation of quarters against a 3-by-1 look. So what we've got is a man coverage just on the far outside, number one receiver, the corner and the receiver. They're locked up. This is the hardest throw for the quarterback to make, so we're going to bet that they can take that man-on-man. Inside on these two receivers, we're going to play a three-man bracket. So we're going to play 3 over 2. Now, between that middle linebacker, the free safety, and the nickel, they're going to distribute those routes accordingly based on however they go. But you've got somebody on the inside, you've got somebody over the top, you've got somebody on the outside. Again, you're able to account for a lot of different route combinations with 3 over 2. To the top, we're going to bracket that receiver with the corner and the strong safety, in this case, Lathan Ransom. You got the corner to take short and outside throws, and you got the safety to take anything vertical and inside breaking. So really taking that away, and that really leaves the linebacker one-on-one with your running back. Now you've got every route accounted for with this kind of structure. We'll watch the way the play plays out. Again, we've got 3 over 2. These guys, they're bracketed. This receiver's blanketed. You've got this receiver taking away any of those crossing routes, and that really means if you're the quarterback, I've got to dump this down to the outside, take that to my running back. Looks like it's the most open, but again, Styles has a beat on it, able to break it up. Here's the footsteps, makes a play. So seeing this diversity in coverage from Ohio State is not something they've shown a ton over the last few years. Certainly before Knowles, it wasn't really in part of the package until you got to go back to really Chris Ash, a decade ago to see this kind of coverage. So it's something different from Ohio State, showing a lot of diversity at the right time of year. Now let's get to those blitzes. Jim Knowles really dialed up the pressure, especially after that first drive, realizing the Buckeyes weren't getting home with the traditional 4-man rush and the back 7 dropping. So he started mixing up the pressure, sending Cody Simon on numerous blitzes throughout the day. In this example, it's what we call 2 steal, where you can see Simon and Jordan Hancock coming from the field, getting home, causing pressure. It's a great, really nice design blitz meant to take advantage of the blocking scheme. Again, we're going to see Simon coming here. We're going to see Hancock out there. But what I want to show is the way that, again, we saw earlier we saw Hero Kanu. We're going to see another backup lineman, Caden McDonald. He's really meant to take away this center because this is what we call a half slide protection. What that means is it's cut in half. The left side of the line, they're all stepping out and blocking this way. They're all meant to block and take away. Meanwhile, on the right side, you can see there's 3 defenders. So this guard's got the inside guy, the tackle's watching the end, and the tight end's going to release. So that means that the back, he's really just watching for a blitz here. Meanwhile, you've got 2 different coverage structures for blocking. So the whole point for what Ohio State's doing is they're trying to attack that. They're going to take the defensive tackle across the face of the center. They're going to send their end right upfield, and that's going to leave this guard in a no-win situation where he's got to defend 2 gaps at once. He's got 2 rushers coming at him. He doesn't know which one to take. He chooses the left. That means the guy on the right gets home. Now, I want to also talk quickly about the coverage, because the coverage is really what is interesting here. This is 2 steal. This is something that has become a staple of Jim Knowles' playbook. Again, those that have been watching and reading film study for a long time know this is something Michigan had a ton of success with last couple of years against the Buckeyes. Ironic coming, at this time of year. But what this is, it's a variation of cover two. What I mean by that is this corner is going to end up playing a deep half. This safety is also going to be playing a deep half. One of those things is normal. That's a safety playing a deep half. A corner, typically you don't see that. And the reason being, we saw the blitz coming here from these two guys. The defensive end is going to drop out into a zone. The linebacker is going to join him. So now we've got three defenders over two receivers, that the tight end and the receiver over on the right side. And then to the bottom of the screen here, what you're going to see is actually the far side safety is going to come down and play like an inside zone, like an interior zone defense, I should say. And the corner is going to press up. This is a lot of lines, I know, so we'll show it in action. Again, you've got your blitz. You've got Denzel Burke dropping to take this receiver. Essentially, it turns into man coverage, but it's a deep half. Styles is watching if the tight end leaves. But then you've got a nice conservative shell where you've got a deep safety over the top. You've got, this receiver running, so Ransom can take him whether he goes deep or whether he breaks on the interior. And then you've got Matthews with eyes on the quarterback. So anything underneath. So, right, if this turns into a hitch, turns into an out, you've got an underneath defender there. So it's a really sound defense where you're playing, again, 3-over-2, 2-over-1, things like that, really helping take that away, giving the offense few options. But really, that gives just enough time for the blitz to get home. So two steals becoming one of the staples of Jim Knowles' Jim Knowles' defense, but playing very aggressively, almost like an offense, if you will. All right, let's show one more blitz from the defense here. We're going to see Simon and this side, the other nickel, Lorenzo Styles, coming off the edge here once again. It looks very similar to the last play, slightly different blitz path, but Simon gets home. They're overloading that left side of the offensive line. Right next to Kenyatta Jackson here. Again, a great pressure that gets home, puts the offensive line, a lot of stress on them. But what I think is really important here is that this was not a 5-6 man blitz. This is actually just a 4-man pressure. So it's the best of both worlds, what we call it, a simulated pressure. Again, we'll show what we mean by overloading. You're going to see Jackson start outside, and then he's going to cut right back inside. Again, we get the nose tackle crossing the face of the center, and that's going to mean that Simon's actually coming on the outside while we get Lorenzo Styles behind him. And that's going to put the tackle this time. Where last play it was the guard who had 2-on-1. This time it's the tackle. He doesn't take either, really. He's put in shambles. But again, even if he had taken one, there's too many guys to block. Just a nice overload blitz package. But behind it, again, I said it's a simulated pressure. What are we seeing here? We're going to see the ball get snapped. There's 5 guys up pressed on the line. But as the ball is snapped, you're going to see Caden Curry once again drop into his zone. The cornerback's got a deep third. You're going to see Lathan Ransom drop into a deep third. The cornerback's going to drop into a deep third. So we've got a cover 3 look here, but it's a traditional cover 3 look in the sense that safety takes here. We got our linebacker, right? The hook zone, another hook zone. So it's a 3 deep, 4 under look. This is how cover 3's drawn up in every middle school in the country. We've just got a defensive end dropping this time. So Ohio State sends pressure for one time. It's overwhelming the offensive line. The right side has nothing to do. The right guard's standing there looking for someone to block. Meanwhile, behind him, we've got, again, 1, 2, 3 deep, 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath defenders. Curtis Rourke has nowhere to go with the ball. He's trying to decipher what the defense is, but he doesn't have much time. Pressure gets home. Big turnover. This happened all day, really made Rourke skittish as the day went on. So, Ohio State's blitz package just had so much to bring to the table on Saturday. Made a big difference. It's why they're leading the Big Ten in sacks. All right, let's switch gears, talk about the Ohio State offense a little bit. Big story, of course, coming in was the offensive line. The new personnel, once again, that the Buckeyes have had to deal with after the loss of Seth McLaughlin. What we see is a little bit of interior pressure coming. Ohio State struggles to pick it up. You can see number 2 getting in, unabated to the quarterback. Ball's a little bit behind. The receiver incomplete. Now, I thought Will did a great job. Will Howard did a great job of getting the ball out quickly to avoid taking sacks. Still put that pretty close, although you'd love to see it, obviously, out in front of the receiver so he's not slowing down, out in front of his hands where the defender can't get it. But Will's really not at fault here. What we're seeing is a miscommunication along the offensive line, and this happened quite a bit on Saturday, despite the score, despite the outcome. And what we're having here is there's 2 guys in the backfield, right? One of those is a running back on the right side, Travion Henderson. He is just leading out. He's running a pass pattern. And the other is G. Scott, whose job is actually to help block. And then once that's done, then he can take off. Now, that, like I showed for Indiana, that means that the pass protection is really split in half here. And because Henderson's leaving, we've got 3 to one side, 3 to the other. To Henderson's side, it's the center and the guards to our right, to the offense's left, Sarahveld and Donovan Jackson. They're all going to be responsible for these spots, these gaps to their right, if you will, their left, our right. Sorry. So they're taking those away. What needs to happen though is what G. Scott needs to be able to look at and recognize. There's pressure coming from the interior because Tiger Shabola, he correctly in this instance picks up the guard. Josh Fryer's looking for pressure on the outside. Now, as the play progresses, what we're going to see is we get that pressure from number 2, and instantly Scott is looking for outside pressure and Josh Fryer is looking for outside pressure. That means nobody is picking up that interior blitz. This is not a capability issue. This is a communication issue, knowing who has what role. Even though all 3 of these guys that are highlighted in this play here, they've all played in every game this season, there's still so much miscommunication happening up front. Needs to get solved. This was happening in both pass protection, which Howard was able to get them out of, but also in the run game, a lot of missed responsibilities, even though technically, capability-wise, when the Buckeyes were in a good position, they were able to take out, what is a pretty good Indiana defensive line. So what does Chip Kelly do to make life easier for that O-line? Simplifies what they're doing. This is a pretty straightforward downhill inside zone run. It's a kind of like a duo play. You hear talked about the NFL a lot. It's essentially a mix between a gap scheme and a zone scheme in the sense that it's a zone step where everybody's just taking a step to their left along they're responsible for this gap. Very simple. But it's a gap scheme in that you're using angle blocks and more leverage than you typically see in zone blocks. We're not trying to create a specific hole because the back is going to actually take the handoff, and now he's got the chance. He's aiming here initially in that A gap between the guard and the center and the guard, but he's got a chance to bump it back here, and he can cut it all the way back here. So it's like a zone run in that sense. And really, but we're making it simple for the O-line. They're just here to wash everybody down this way, come from our right to their left. And it's a really nicely blocked, nice play here. But what I want to highlight specifically are the receivers, because they're in a bunch set over here on the right. And you can see Agbuka, you would think he's got to get all the way up to the linebacker, but instead, he's actually just going to seal out this nickel back, and we're going to see Carnell Tate come through and then hold on to the cornerback, because Tate isn't in great position. He's really got to kind of get in front and cut him off. That's tough, especially for a receiver, but it's a lot easier for Agbuka to actually make that block. Now, that ends up being a critical block here. Takes out number 12, really seals him on the outside. G. Scott gets a good hand on number 4, the inside linebacker. It doesn't hold him quite enough. Eventually, 4 is able to shed, get off, make a tackle. Granted, drags him down 5 yards after contact. But, this is really just a nice job simplifying life for the offensive line. Everybody knows I'm stepping left. We don't have to worry about who's got who. Nice job here. Again, one thing to also point out, Indiana's they played a lot of this tight mint front. What do we say that's like a 3 guys, it's a bare front. You would have called that in the old days, because that's really meant to plug the inside gaps. That is meant to take away in these inside runs, so it's no surprise that we can actually see Judkins bounce it outside the tackle, right? That's actually where he's going to end up hitting this. The inside was taken away all day by Indiana, so Ohio State had to find ways to run the ball outside. As the game progressed, they were able to. This is actually the exact same concept that at the end of the game, Travion Henderson broke a long run, ended up sliding, trying to eat more time off the clock. But this is the exact same scheme they ran on that play. So Ohio State finding ways to run the ball despite some issues on the offensive line, communication-wise, and a tight front from Indiana. Now, the way Ohio State attacked the most in this game was definitely through the air. Will Howard had an incredibly efficient game, finishing over 80% throwing the ball and completions. Really took care of it, was accurate. This is early in the second drive. This is one of the first or second plays of the second drive where Ohio State would end up scoring. But what we can see here is just a little short throw outside, but I want to show, because this is going to be a theme for the rest of the video here, is the way Ohio State absolutely attacked this player, the defensive end. Now we can see that there's the 3 guys on the inside right next to him. They're all trying to take away the inside. They're in that tight mint bear front, whatever you want to call it. But what we're going to see is that 41 here, he's actually going to drop into coverage. We saw Ohio State do that with their defensive end in some of the defensive clips. Indiana does this a lot with 41 here. They usually bring pressure for either from the nickel or from one of these outside linebackers. so they're bringing 4. In this case, you can see that we've got the nickel coming off that edge. So it's still a four-man concept. Just who is the 4th guy? We see the end scraping out here. Cornerbacks bailing. We got a hook defender in this sense. But really what's going to end up happening is you're going to see Jeremiah Smith come up and hold the corner and the interior defender. And you're going to see this is a simple, like all curls, a spacing route, you might call it. He just runs a short little curl route on the outside, just a quick hitch. Will sees it, but he does a great job of throwing the ball out here to Carnell Tate's outside, because that means that slower defender, this is a defensive end, mind you, has to make up more space to get there. Now, if he throws the ball inside at all, he throws it in here, the defender might be able to get there and make a play. But again, Will throws it out here to the outside. Great ball, great concept meant to attack, and something that Ohio State would do all day long. All right, later on that same drive, it's 4th and 10. Will Howard drops back. Been kind of a crazy series here, but he finds Carnell Tate wide open in the corner. Plenty of room for a first down, keeps things moving. Again, you can see him here taking the snap. You're going to see pressure from this middle linebacker. That's their 4th. Good blitz pickup. Does get hit, but gets the ball out in time. Now let's talk about the blitz pickup really quickly here, because it's not the cleanest, right? We're going to see a little bit of a cross, a twist here, and this is where having those new bodies makes a big difference, because Donovan Jackson and Austin Stifled are not on the same page with handling this twist. 4 gets through the middle here, takes out Jackson. That allows this edge player to come over the top and actually get a hit on Will Howard. Now, this is early in a game. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't the edge player, it was actually the running back, because Stifled peels off. Not the cleanest. Now on the other side, we're going to see these guys handle the twist much better, right? You're going to see this guy come in, the head, it's a simple twist stunt, but Hinsman's there to pick it up. Unfortunately, that linebacker coming through making a hit. But the story of this play and the reason it works is because the defensive end, once again, is going to be dropping into coverage. And Ohio State's going to run a variation of a smash concept. What that means is we're going to get Tate, who ends up being the actual receiver. He's going to be on a corner route. We're going to get Ibuka out there. We're going to get a flat route from the tight end. But the concept is going to stretch, right? We get here, and over the middle. Now, Indiana's in cover 2. What do I mean by that? It's really a Tampa 2. We've got one safety deep, and then we got 5 guys underneath. We got this guy as our seam runner. But again, this is a defensive end who is responsible, and suddenly he's got 2 guys in his zone. He is not used necessarily, he's not trained as much to be able to play, and how does he affect these routes? It's 4th and 10, and he's pressed up on the underneath receiver rather than dropping back and filling this gap. Meanwhile, it's a nice route concept because the safety is more worried about Ibuka on the post, and that leaves Carnell Tate wide open. So again, more issues up front, but Will Howard getting the ball out in time. And then really nice concept meant to attack one of the weak spots in Indiana's defense. All right, this is the final play from that first scoring drive for Ohio State. Touchdown to Emeka Ibuka in the corner. Howard drops it in just over Lanell Carr, number 41, that defensive end. He's back in coverage again, folks. This is a tough day for Mr. Carr here in his final game against Ohio State. He's been in Indiana for a couple years now. What we're going to see is this is a quarters variation, even though it's not showing that before the snap. We're going to see like a slant, a little bit of a wheel concept. That's a great quarters beater from the Buckeyes. And what that does is as Jeremiah Smith takes off on this slant or this post route, the safety over top and this inside defender, they're going to run with him. And then that means that Ibuka's basically running untouched to the back corner. Now, the defensive end, he's responsible for this underneath zone, but he recognizes I've got nowhere else to go. So Carr flips his hips, does a good effort to try to recover. Ball comes in. He actually gets a barely bit of a finger on it. But again, this is what happens when you have a defensive end covering a guy who's going to be an NFL wide receiver. So Indiana continually did this all game. They've had great success running this scheme all year. You could see it on film. Ohio State knew it was coming. It's part of the reason I'm sure why the coaching staff, Brian Hartline, tweeting out after the game that this wasn't a surprise to the coaches. Dave felt confident. Watching this scheme, it's really what they had shown all year. They didn't show much from an adjustment, from a change-up perspective. This is the Hoosier defense we've seen all year, and Ohio State really picked it apart.